again with Robert Joseph.
Indeed. Hello, everybody.
So, you had a fucking spooky story to relate to me, and it almost sounded like some Skinwalker activity, which is right up my alley. But before we get to that, we got the Halloween season upon us. You got any favorite horror movies?
Favorite horror movies. Ever since I became I guess quote unquote red pilled, I completely stopped consuming anything out of Hollywood. But
Yeah.
I'd say, I mean, when I was a little kid, my parents let me watch Stephen King's It I was real young. So that was instilled in my bones from when I was a young age. That horrified me. But
Yeah, that
as
gets
in terms
mixed
of
reviews, and to me, those clown sequences are some of the spookiest shit ever fucking filmed.
from the first one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. It was well done,
In
you know.
the new one, it's just like spastic motions as fast as possible, and that's supposed to be
Yeah, well, I
scary.
mean, you see obviously it's almost like the technology and everything got them filmmakers to be lazier
Yeah,
and they don't put as much effort into things, and they obviously have dumbed down. They don't believe people can keep along with plots and storylines, and so everything is about just rapid images and trying to what are they called, like jump scares and
yeah.
stupid things
It's
like
all
that.
very cheap. It's like
It
an
is.
amusement park ride, except
Yeah,
not as fun or anything.
exactly. I mean, I was a huge fan. I loved the Freddy Krueger movies, obviously. I liked them a lot more than the other slasher flicks because I found Freddy to be much more interesting character than Jason or Michael Myers or any of them. But in terms of favorite horror movie, I don't know exactly. I guess I mean, what could I'll get back to you on that,
Alright,
but I'll
well,
think about it.
for for me,
I mean, I like
every
deep
day.
storylines that not necessarily something that's like a slasher, but something that kind of leaves you questioning reality
Yeah.
afterwards. Like
Oh,
more of a
absolutely.
mental horror film rather than what they put out there nowadays.
Well, every day I could have a different answer to this question. I fucking
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
will have a different answer every day going forward up until Halloween. But right now, I'm feeling the old Romero zombie movies, like Dawn of the
Okay.
Dead in particular. And
Yeah.
you talk about not being into the Hollywood stuff these days, but and you see it like especially in Dawn of the Dead, how it was like the director's baby. That film was his brainchild, and he had fun with it, and there's true love in the making of it. And you can see it just in
Yeah.
the carnage and the funny scenes, and like you're saying, the psychological aspect of it, where it's like
Yeah.
it's a monster movie, but the real danger isn't the zombies. It's the people around you. It's your own mind. And then
Exactly.
you get to the end and nobody even is confirmed to have any kind of future. Most of those movies, everybody's just dead in the end. I think Dawn,
Yeah.
they insisted on an ambiguous ending where they fly off into the sunset, but they
Yeah,
probably
and I
die.
think those are the best because it leaves you they leave it on a cliffhanger like that because it's leaves you wondering what could have happened, what and a million different angles could have take place, and yeah, so I agree with you. That I mean, and also what you said about when filmmakers would really put their heart and soul into a project. The difference you can see, even if they have low funding and a terrible budget and they don't have much into it, when they really care about the project and treat it as their baby, it really shows.
Yeah, yeah, magic happens then. That's
Yes,
real art.
exactly. Exactly. And yeah, the it so yeah, some of my favorite projects are I mean, I wouldn't call them indie projects, but usually when a director's their first attempt at making a film or when it's a story that they've just they kind of grabbed onto when they were young and they were I have to make this into a film and they do their best and they put everything out there. I find that to be the best kind of film.
Yeah, that is truly the best display of humanity. But
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
further ado, we can get into the spooky story.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so do you want me to start with it?
Yeah, just hit me.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'll give a little bit of background on myself. I'm a Christian, so I was raised Catholic, and I mean very loosely. So I always had the Christianity instilled within me, and as Christianity goes, anything of this nature would be considered a demon, right? So anything
Sure.
paranormal is demonic. basically, is that would be like, to put it bluntly, what Christian theology says. But like I said, as I was raised loosely, my mother was always into. I mean, she was like, she was. I mean, I don't know if I would even consider her a Christian anymore, but we always had like. I wasn't like kept from like thinking about these things. Like my mom was always about like uh, different aspects of spirituality outside of Christianity. So like as a child, I was open to whatever. I wasn't like hammered with any specific doctrine. So like I was free to explore whatever my mind decided to explore.
Were you
And
like me in that you were fascinated by them all?
yeah, well, I still am, man. I
Yeah.
mean, I went to school. I had 2 degrees, one in history and one in anthropology. And I'm fascinated in humanity, and I'm fascinated in religion. Like I've studied all the world's major religions, and I've delved into like pretty much everything. So like anything, I'm interested in everything. I mean, most Christians won't go that route because it's almost like it's like they fear having their own faith undermined, and like so their faith isn't that strong, so like they won't venture into something because maybe like it'll make them question things that they're not supposed to question. But I've
Yeah.
never, but it's true, you know. I mean, because you'll see
On a
Christians.
side note, just I was watching a creationist today talk about cryptozoology, and I've been realizing lately that Christians kind of they fucking short circuit when they start talking about Bigfoot. And I guess the problem is that you don't
Yes.
have to talk about Bigfoot as a Christian, but they start doing it. They don't know how to take it. They go all in on it in some crazy thing where they're just like, "Oh, I don't know. It can't. It's not possible."
Well,
It's
yeah,
just
and my
funny to me.
conclusion about that phenomenon is that it's like their faith isn't very firm, and they're afraid of anything that could be brought into like their mind that could undermine it, you know. But if you have sincere faith, like you should feel free to explore different avenues, and I mean take in different information, you know, and like you'll have so I agree with you completely on that they're afraid of speculation basically, you
Yeah.
know. And I've never been that way. I mean, I've spent thousands of hours researching whatever cryptozoology, different spiritual things, anything you can think of, right? And because it's always fascinated me, you know. I mean,
Oh yeah.
mythology is fat. I've been fascinated by mythology. I've been fascinated by all the things that like basically you can't see, feel, or touch, but like they're still there, you know. And obviously like uh, the in terms of like the narrative that's given to us by the media and whatever, you can't trust that. So you really can only you have to feel like you have to like educate yourself. You know, you have to be a go-getter
You
when
have to
it
be able
comes
to
to.
prove things yourself, I think.
Yeah, well, and also you can't trust those that say this or that is false or true. You know, like in
Yeah.
terms of Bigfoot, you've got people that are like, I've seen this, and they'll cry about it and they believe it, and then you'll have someone come out and they'll be like, you're a crazy person. It's not true. It's like, well, this person seems pretty sincere and they saw what they saw. So you can't just because you haven't been able to physically prove something doesn't mean you've disproved it. You know.
Yeah.
So, and also in terms of like my background in anthropology, I mean, we've got skeletons of Gigantopithecus, which would be Bigfoot, right? So, why is it like maybe this species that we think is extinct is not extinct, and maybe it's more intelligent than we know, and it recognizes humans as a threat, and it hides. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And even the mountain gorilla, that wasn't they thought that was a myth until like the 1920s. So
Yeah.
you know, and then
But that's
and
the thing.
even other things like the krakens, giant squids. I mean, there's
People
more and
don't
more
realize
evidence
that
every day that they exist.
the Bigfoot myths go back further
Oh,
than
and they're
like
in
giant
every
apes were confirmed.
yes, and every single group of man has stories about Bigfoot. You
Yeah.
know, Native Americans, different groups in Asia, groups in everywhere. You know, and
Australia. That's been
yeah, exactly. And
my
they all have
kick.
different names for it. I believe the Native Americans thought it was more of like a spiritual entity.
Every source I hear says something different. Some say they thought it was an animal. Some say they were humans. And some say they were something metaphysical.
Dude, and then you've got people that say that they're like brought by aliens and dropped, and there's UFO sightings that link them. So
I
there's so
love
many
Bigfoot
different
lore.
things. But yeah. So like I said, I've always been open to these things, but I'm a critical thinker as well. So like, if anything happens, I am not one to like latch onto it and like I 100% believe this is true, or vice versa. So I'm always going to critique something. And the uh, the story I had, like I told you that I did some research into it, and I wasn't able to find much that really nailed it home to me. So like I've always been wondering like if I was ever going to come across the right person that could further explain it to me, or some blog online of someone with a similar experience. But I guess I'll tell you the experience. So I'm sure everyone knows this feeling where like you feel like you're being watched, or like you feel like there's eyes on you and you can't explain it. Uh,
Yep.
and the older you get, the more you're just like, I'm just gonna let that go, right? And it's almost like when people are young, their minds are more open to different things, and like they're more sensitive to uh, like how can I say it? Like I guess sixth sense. They're more sensitive to those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say I was probably like between 20 and 25 when this happened. But the house I was in, the front room, the television room had like windows all around it, right? And it was on the street. So I mean, it was common to be like, oh man, someone could easily be looking in these windows, right? But this was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was by myself, and I had the feeling that I was being watched. And not the first time I've had this feeling, but I was like, okay, that's a little weird. I'll just let it go. Another couple minutes go by, I still feel it, and it's very strong. It wasn't just like paranoia, like a normal, like, oh, you're at night, someone could be watching your windows. Like I'm not that type of person that's paranoid about those things. But like a half hour goes by, and I still feel it. So I was like, this is too strange. I have to go at least check outside, right? And so this is this is in New Jersey, right? And it's nowhere near any kind of woods, like nowhere, not near the South Jersey, Jersey Devil area, not near anything where like you could encounter wild animals, whether it's a bear or whatever,
Was
right?
it
Like no, the
particularly
only wild animals
residential?
you'd
Like, were
see are
there?
what's that?
Was it particularly residential? Like lots of people
Yes,
living
incredibly
around?
residential, very residential. And so like yeah, like so there's no chance of it being like an animal from the woods or whatever, right? And there's no chance of it being a well, once I get to the story, I'll say what happened. So I have this feeling, and I'm like, wow, this it just won't go away. So I go outside, and I like I didn't. It wasn't a big home, but so I invest. I look around, like anywhere could possibly someone could be, which like not many spots, and it was pretty open. So like no one could easily hide themselves. So I look in every area. I walk around for 5, 10 minutes, and I find nothing. But I still kind of have the feeling that I'm being watched. So I get back to my the door I'm about to go in, and I just like I say out loud, I know you're out here. Why don't you show yourself, right? And like as I say, and even right now I get goosebumps thinking about it because I say that, and I'm like, and I turn around one last time, and literally 5 feet away from me, like there was a couple steps, like it would be like I'm at the top of of 2 steps, and then like 5 feet down, like 5 feet away from me, is a wolf, right? And I'm talking about like not like a husky, not some kind of dog that's similar to a wolf, but a giant wolf, like humongous. I've never seen a dog this big. This was a wolf. It was not a dog. And it's just, and like literally, I searched everything, right? Like there was no spot for anything to hide. I searched everywhere. I turn around for a second. I say what I said, why don't you show yourself? I turn him around immediately, and this thing's sitting right there, just staring me in the eyes. And it was the spookiest thing I've ever felt in my life.
Did
And
did you feel like you were immediately in danger?
I didn't feel like I was in danger because it didn't like
Yeah.
like you come across like an angry or like vicious dog or like
Yeah, yeah.
something seems aggressive. Like, it's like it shows it, right? And you get that sense. But I didn't even get the sense that this was an animal. It it wasn't a sense of fear. It wasn't a sense of like, oh, okay, I knew something was out here. It was just like, what is this? What is going on right now? I didn't
Yeah.
hear this thing come up.
I would
I
have used the
didn't,
word like foreboding or something. Like just
no,
it's
that's
like a
exactly
terrible
how,
omen.
and like, I'm the type of like, I'm a big dude. So like, I'm not afraid of dogs. I'm not afraid of like, I've never been afraid of any animal. So like, I'm always the one to approach an animal, pet it. And like, but like I said, very residential area. No one in the area had like a dog that looked anything like this. I mean, this was a wolf. This was not a dog. No one had this pet. And you know how it is in like those kind of areas. There's no dogs roaming the streets. Like you don't have
Yeah.
like yeah, it's just not possible, right? So and the feeling I got was it was almost like the very rare occasion where your mind just completely shuts off completely, and it was just silence. And like there was not a bird chirping, there was not a sound whatsoever. It was dead silence. And the feeling I had was like it was like shock, but it was also like this like you said, foreboding, but not necessarily like I'm in danger. More
Yeah.
like this is something outside my realm of understanding, and like, but the only thing I thought was, do not turn your back on this thing, right?
Yeah.
And staring me in the face, and like it was almost like, I mean, this might sound crazy, but it was almost as if this wolf, which I don't believe it was, because it didn't give the feeling of an animal, it was acknowledging the fact that I sensed it. Like it was like, you sensed me out here. And like it was kind of like almost like a pat on the back, like, well done for
Yeah.
trusting your instinct and recognizing I was out here. And like it was almost like a smirking kind of attitude, like I'm surprised you felt my presence.
It's
And
almost the trickster archetype.
yes, exactly. Like it was like this. It was almost like the animal or whatever, the entity was just as surprised by me recognizing it and sensing it, that it was kind of like giving me the like, all right, I'm gonna let you know that I was here and you did sense something and you followed your instinct and you trusted that feeling and you went for it. And but it wasn't like, come over here and pet me, and I wasn't going to, and
Yeah.
I didn't turn my back on it. We locked eyes for like um I mean, what, 20, 30 seconds, but it seemed like forever. And I just slowly backed into the house because I didn't want to turn around. And I got inside, and it just like, I was just like blown away by it. And I didn't know what to think about it. I knew, I mean, the only thing I did feel was like, man, you really should trust your instinct more often, because you were right, something was out there. But I wasn't expecting a wolf. I mean, that's the last thing in the
Sure.
world I was expecting, a wolf. And the yeah, so and then like maybe 10, 20 minutes, and the feeling of being watched went away like almost immediately. Like it left, right? And so I went back out there later, and I couldn't find anything. There was nothing. And I wanted to tell you this when we spoke earlier, but like the feeling I got from it, like most people will jump to werewolf, right? Or like wolf man or something like that.
Yeah.
I really got this feeling I got from it was like vampiric, right? It was more like, if the entity was anything, it was a vampire, right? Like in terms
Yeah.
of like cryptozoology. Like I didn't think werewolf. I didn't think.
Well, you were saying that you see these things from more of a demonic perspective, right?
Well, no, I was saying that that is the Christian like doctrine
Oh, I
on
see.
anything. I mean, in terms of myself, well, I mean, I guess it didn't have a feeling of like it was something good. That's for sure. And it didn't have a necessary feeling of something evil. It just, like I said, it was outside my understanding, and it was huge. I mean, this thing was gigantic, and I wasn't about to. Just like my instinct told me, don't turn your back on this thing and don't get any closer to it. And and also, it's not an animal. Like
Yeah.
that felt that right away. It had more of like the feeling you get with another person.
See,
But
now
like,
that
but like I said,
immediately it leads me
what's
to the
that?
Skinwalker thing immediately, like a
Well,
person
that's what.
who would use like some sort of weird magic to transform into an animal.
Well, like Native American legend, yeah. And when I researched it, like I'm coming from like Irish heritage, I researched it and I saw a couple things, and like one of them was like the Irish Hellhound. So I clicked on that immediately, and it was like this story about people seeing these giant black dogs, right? And like they usually kind of uh, they were associated with death or death soon to
Yeah.
occur around the person. And but this thing didn't look like a dog at all. It wasn't black. It was a wolf. And and then I saw Native American lore about skin changers and things of that sort. And then I also saw things where like attributes given to vampires aren't just like they can turn into a bat, but they can turn into other things like wolves and things.
Well,
And
that's the Skinwalker thing. It is in many, many, many cultures in many different forms. It's not
Mhm.
just the Native American thing, and it
Well, I
seems to
think it would
me
be in Christianity as well, and it would be like a demonic thing. So yeah, like a demon
that's
taking the
kind of
form of
where I'm
something.
going. Like it's in theory, if someone's doing weird rituals in order to channel, whatever you're familiar or you whatever you shapeshift,
Yeah.
like that is demonic, right? Like, and it's like it's hard to even see how like you talk about like the European missionaries first coming to the New World and seeing what the Indians are doing, and then it all looks demonic as fuck. And
Yes.
like it obviously does from our perspective, and like it even does
Mhm.
today. We say it's oh it's just people's differences or whatever. It still looks
Well, like
demonic
I
as
mean,
fuck.
anytime where you're sacrificing humans or things, like
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, like that's got an evil aspect to it. Yeah. And but yeah, what I wanted to say was also like this thing wasn't like there was no it was 100% physically there. Like it wasn't like, oh, like this is a vision, like this is like a spirit looking thing. No, this was a wolf in the flesh, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, it didn't give off the vibe of a person. And I mean, no, not it did give off the vibe of a person, but like a person with something extra, right? Like not
Yeah.
like I said, like vampiric. Like it felt vampiric. And my thoughts afterwards were like, was this thing just like roaming? Like, was it looking for a victim? Was it specifically seeking out me for this experience? Was it, I mean, the feeling I did get was like it was giving me a pat on the back, like
Well,
you
yeah.
recognized that I was there.
The impression seems to be it was watching you for an extended period of time, and you recognize that. Yeah.
Exactly. And but then it also kind of like gave me credit for actually recognizing it,
Yeah.
like how like almost like some people are more open to these things where others are not, and like some people have like an extra sense of awareness where some people do not. And but then I was thinking to myself like, and I also obviously checked reports and like the police blotter, like did anyone else see something? Like there was nothing of the sort. And so yeah, like I left that incident feeling like A, that I should always trust my instinct, and B, with the question of A, what was it? Because like I told you, it wasn't a dog, and it wasn't. I mean, even though it looked like a wolf, it didn't. It acted like a person. It didn't act like an animal. Like it ended. The second question I had was like, why did this occur, right? Like, why did it? Was it just going around everywhere, or was it specifically targeting me, or was it
I,
like a
I
million?
would be wondering, like, even if somebody was right there next to you, would they even have been able to see it?
Yeah, well, that's another thing, and yeah, but that's why I mentioned the thing about it being 100% physical. Like,
Yeah.
I think if someone was with me, I don't think the thing would have showed itself.
Yeah.
That's where I would come to, because it was there, and yeah, so I never really knew what to make of it, and it was so, and like some people would say like, oh, that's just an encounter with an animal, but this wasn't, man. It was not an encounter with an animal. It had a spiritual aspect to this encounter, and it just was, it's unexplainable. And yeah, and I've never been able to figure out exactly what it was, but it just blew my mind.